My name is Ian and welcome to Planted. I'm on a mission to help you have more success in your yard, and I willingly share with you my plant knowledge that I've gained over the years. The planted courtyard is all around me, and it's a tiny 1,000 square foot courtyard. But to really grow choice plants on the boundaries of the hardy zone, it's really important that you have a greenhouse. In this video, I'm going to share with you my tips and tricks to make the most of your greenhouse and not to waste effort, money, and time. Let's go. Having a greenhouse would indicate that you could grow pretty much anything you want at any time of the year. All plants will grow, and you'll have a cornucopia of cut flowers and vegetables and fruits to eat. The reality is very different. Owning a greenhouse doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for you. And what I want to point out in this video is that you have to consider a greenhouse a tool. Too big and you won't fill it and it's expensive to heat. Too small and it doesn't solve the challenges that you have, and you can't grow the correct amount of fruit, flowers and foliage. So the trick is to have a way to properly size the greenhouse so that you can get the results that you want. Now, my 1,000 square foot courtyard, I don't have a lot of space for a bigger greenhouse. This greenhouse is 6 feet by 4 feet. It's tiny, but remember this, it's a tool and it serves my purpose. Every year I dig up and repot and store at least 50 plants that go into my greenhouse, and they benefit from the protection it gives them throughout our very cold winter months. And that's the key. If I had a greenhouse that was 10 times this size, would it be nice to have? Sure. Do I need it? Maybe not. Do I have space for it? Absolutely not. So you can only grow what you've got space for. My 6 foot by 4 foot footprint, covered with Solarwrap, it's also called Cooke in Europe, has been very, very useful. It warms up in the day by collecting the radiant energy from the sun, and I put a barrel in there that absorbs heat, which is then released during the nighttime to offset the gain, to offset the drop in temperature outside when it goes below freezing. But there's 3 things that I want to share with you today. There's 3 really important aspects of greenhouse management that if you don't get right, these could be the things that are holding you back. And I've got some diagrams that I want to show you at the end of this video. But let's get into these 3 really important aspects. The first is really obvious. It's the physical size of your greenhouse. If you can get by with a smaller greenhouse and get, say, 95% of what you want, I would strongly encourage you to do that. Going bigger isn't necessarily better. So the first thing is set the right size. The next thing you have to do is set the right minimum temperature. Now, I'm all about frost-free. So in Fahrenheit, that's 32. In centigrade, that's 0. In Fahrenheit, if I can keep my greenhouse with a minimum winter temperature of 40 to 45 degrees, that means that I know my plants are not freezing, and if they're stored in here on the dry side, they will just be in tick over, and they'll come through the winter just fine. Now, if I wanted to grow orchids in here, I'd have to heat it to a much higher temperature. I don't want to do that. So it's really important that you know the temperature range that you want to grow your plants at. I'm at that 45 minimum, and it can go a bit higher. And the third of the 3 things that you have to consider is the duration of the winter that you will be adding supplemental heat. So to be clear here, obviously in late spring, summer and early fall, your greenhouse is doing what it does. It's plenty warm enough, and in the summer I take my door off, as you can see here. You then got the shoulder season where with the door closed, that is enough to keep inside warm and frost free, and that for me happens in November and March. But it's late December, January and February that is the coldest for me, and that's when I need to get a supplemental heating system. I have a thermostat in there that I will place, and that will switch on a heat lamp, and that's worked very well. But this year I want to be a bit more sophisticated. I want to do things a little bit more scientific. One of the challenges with a smaller greenhouse is that although it's easier to heat, it's also more likely to spike. That is, it'll be cold, the sun will come round, the sun will hit the greenhouse as you can see now, and if all the doors are closed, it will suddenly spike in temperature. And it might be 40 degrees, it'll very quickly be 60 and then 80 degrees. And it's important that you've got some way of venting that excess heat. So these diagrams are aimed to help you. I hope you like them, and I hope it makes sense. I'm a great believer in trying to increase my skills and your skills, but sometimes you can't shoot for the very top until you've got a layer of knowledge underneath it on which to act as a very firm footing or basis. So these three things, size of greenhouse, temperature range, and duration of cold period, once you get those down, you'll be off to the races. So let's get to these diagrams. So let's get into this size of greenhouse. Now, it's very easy to understand that the size of a greenhouse will be really important. My greenhouse is 4 feet wide, 6 feet deep, and obviously we have a square, and then it is going up in height. So what you have is a column of air, and that's the size that you want to hear. Now, a greenhouse is going to have a point to it. When it comes to calculating the size, all you have to do is go halfway up. And then the idea is that that piece there is this, and that piece is that. So I've got 6 feet by 4 feet, which is the width and the depth. And the height, we're going to say, is 7 feet. Being as I am based in America, we are still in the imperial square feet measurement rather than square meters. So in square feet, 6 by 4 by 7 is 168 square feet. Not very big at all. The key here is that the energy required to increase that area is going to be quite modest. I don't need a lot of heat to get my gain. Now let's go for a larger greenhouse. So let's say our greenhouse is 30 feet by 12, and we've got our column going up. No rocket science there required, and we'll still go with a 7-foot average. It might be a little bit higher, but this will make it a direct comparison to this one. So we've got 30 by 12 by 7. So drum roll please, 2,520 feet squared. Just look at the difference in size. In fact, let's just do that. If we divide 2,520, and we'll divide that by 168. It's 15 times. This one, 30 by 12 by 7, 4 by 6. 15 times more area to heat. And this is the point I want to make to you. If you can get by with this size, you don't need to go for this size. Very easy to end up with something too large. And I have to make the point, very easy to end up with something too small. I've made this work for me because it's the right size for me. So you've got to get the correct size, and don't forget that when you come up in height, you want to average out that height rather than going for the very top or going for the eave. So let's move on to our next little subject, and that is the duration that you're going to be heating your greenhouse for. Now, I'm going to do mid-October, OCT. We're going to go all the way through until mid-March. So this is mid, so we'll do 15 and 15. The reason I like these two dates is because there's still energy in the sunlight that we get in the daytime. still powerful. Now, if we do, this is mid-October, we've then got November, December, January, February, and that would be the beginning of March is right there. And this is the end of March is right there. So that worked out pretty good. October, November, January, February. These are the months. I call this the shoulder season. Once we start to get into November, we might start to get frosts. And then we still have frosts here in Connecticut going on into April, but they're quite intermittent. And just having the greenhouse door closed is enough to look after the plants. So what we end up with is this window. This is the period here where we need some sort of heat source. Now, if you live further south where it's milder, you might find that your heat requirement is this. It's partly January, February, because things start to really heat up for you on the shoulder season. And then conversely, if you went further north up into Maine, you might find that you need a heat source all the way from early October going into late March. It doesn't take a rocket science to realize that if you don't gauge this right, you're either going to kill your plants or you're going to be wasting money. This is me. I know exactly my window of time that I have to increase the temperature in my greenhouse. So that's the second of our 3 challenges. And the next one is the temperature rise. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back to the middle of October. We're going to go all the way through until March. We'll have, this is our timeline. Now, I'm going to draw a line, and it's representative. It's not accurate because I don't know the weather that's going to be coming this year. It might be milder, it might be colder, we don't know. But what we end up with is a drop-off that comes down, and then it will start to come back up. I don't think anyone would disagree with that. The challenge is that if we are to highlight January and February, which are the real bad months, obviously we've got this side and this side, but what we might find is we could get a storm come through, and we've all heard the term the polar vortex, where that temperature will plummet and then come back up. Then we might get another plummet here, and then a mild one, and then another mild one there. We also might get a bit of a rebound where the temperature will spike for a little bit, and then we might have a spike there. So our heating system needs to accommodate the spikes with ventilation, and it needs to accommodate the very, very, very cold drops that we get in temperature. Now, if I just draw a little mark here, let's say that this is 32 degrees or 0, and we come all the way across. This measurement here could be as low as 15 degrees F, really cold, and it could be even lower than that. We can have another one over here that is 18 degrees F. The point I now want to make is we have to put all of this together. Let's say we have a large greenhouse, and we want to keep a minimum temperature of 60 degrees, and we've got to keep it warm like that for 5 months. That's quite the undertaking. We could go for a small greenhouse like the one I've got, and we want to keep it at, we'll say, 42 degrees, and we're going to keep it like that for 10 weeks. 10 weeks. Small, lower temperature, shorter duration. Larger size, higher temperature, longer duration. And then we could go down for a medium. And we're going to keep that at, say, 50 degrees. And we're going to keep it at that temperature for 6 weeks. What happens is, if you end up with a greenhouse like I've got here, small 42 10 weeks and you have great success, you might think, oh, I'm going to jump up to a bigger greenhouse. The amount of energy that this greenhouse will need will be substantial. You have to make sure that you can supply it. Conversely, if you're in a medium greenhouse and you're not using it all, you might be able to cut it in half and go for 2/3 of that medium greenhouse, drop the temperature slightly, and keep it warmer for a longer period of time. So I would encourage people to do this analysis. And what we've got is size of greenhouse, we've got the duration that it needs to be heated, and then we've got the temperature that we want to keep it. So thank you for watching Planted. Tell your friends, tell your family. I love doing these videos. There's a huge catalogue on how to grow plants in the planted courtyard, and I would encourage you to go back, and there's probably something there that might be very useful to you. Thank you.